The following game was played in August 2004. The opening was the Scandinavian Defence, and the reason I bring this game up is that lately I've been sort of looking at the Scandinavian Defence again, mostly on a DVD covering the subject or the opening, and I think it's a very solid opening, and even though you don't really see it on top level chess, but that has its explanations, of course. For one thing, strong players, I mean top players, want to make things as complicated as possible for their opponents, and I believe that the Scandinavian Defence is a pretty straightforward opening or defense for black. And anyway, so let's take a look at this following game. I was black, like I said, and my opponent was pretty strong. We played 2 games, and I can't remember the outcome of the first game, but I think I might have won or even lost that game. But he was a strong player, so I had to do my best to win or at least have some winning chances. So let's take a look at this. He played e4, I played d5, and this is the first move, of course, in the Scandinavian Defence. E takes d5, queen takes d5, and knight c3. At the time I played queen a5 like I did in this game, but of course later I will, or actually even these days I prefer queen d6, and there's a lot of theory on that, but I believe that queen a5 is the oldest move, the original move, so to speak. And here he played d4, all according to theory. Knight f6, bishop c4. Of course there are many moves that white can play, like he did, bishop c4, but there's also knight f3, bishop d2. I believe that many players will look at bishop d2, you know, a discovery, for example, if knight e4 or whatever. But all that is part of the theory. It's not no danger for black at all, even if white plays bishop d2. So bishop c4, c6, and the reason with c6 is that, well, for one thing, it opens up this diagonal over here, so the black queen can escape to any of these squares. And the other is that it sort of stops the d5 move. For example, if white would finish his development, and then when the time is right to play d5. And d5 is actually a pretty common move in the Scandinavian Defence, especially when there's a rook on e1, and if the black king is still in the center, then d5 it can be very strong. So c6, knight f3, bishop f5. I'm not sure how. I believe anyway here. Yes, knight f3, and yeah, it turns out that bishop e5 is actually the most common move here, because, well, after e6, for example, if not bishop e5 and e6, we can see that the bishop on c8 will be locked in, and that's not a very good idea. So bishop f5 makes a lot of sense. Bishop d2, and here's the move that we looked at. But you know, the discovery is, there's no problem with the discovery. If knight d5, then just queen d8, and similarly if knight e4, queen d8. It doesn't matter, and black doesn't worry about getting double pawns here. So e6, queen e2, bishop b4, a3, and castles. Of course, white can't take the bishop over here because there's a rook hanging on a1, so he played h3, although I can't really see the point. Maybe he was afraid of a move like bishop g4, but on the other hand, black still has one more piece to develop, so there's no reason to play a move like that. But he played h3, and I believe that h3 also was the last move in the, well, he got out of the book, so to speak. So castles here was the last book move, and then h3, and now we're both playing on our own, so to speak. And here knight b to d7, g4, bishop g6, castles. Another move could have been knight e5 perhaps, castles, bishop takes e3, because now of course there is a threat to take on b4, because if you check, then just knight over here, and black has just lost the piece. And also, if the bishop ever moves, then the discovery could be a serious threat. But you know, it makes sense to just take the knight, even though of course it wasn't actually completely necessary. Bishop takes e3, queen c7, knight e5, bishop e4, f3, and bishop d5. He doesn't want to trade off his light square bishop, of course, because it's good to have that diagonal over here. d3 to h7, which he did, bishop d3, and now a5, rook h to f1, b5, and well, black is sort of ahead in the attack, because I mean, I have these pawns coming at him, but on the other hand, white has moves like g5, kicking off the knight, and then perhaps a move like h4 or something. He played f4, b4, sacrificing a pawn, with the idea to open up this diagonal, this file. So he took a takes b4, a takes b4, bishop b4, rook f to b8. So now there's a little, well, some pressure on his king. He went back to e1, perhaps bishop c3 was a little bit passive, perhaps. And bishop e1, he can also have ideas like, for example, at some points bishop to g3, having this diagonal. Rook a1 check, king d2, takes, rook takes b2. Well, I don't know, it wasn't actually necessary to give up that pawn, but okay. Bishop c3, so the bishop comes back anyway. I'll check again, rook b1 check, king d2, and now just rook takes f1, queen takes f1, knight e4, bishop takes e4. It doesn't really matter, because, well, of course, he has to take the bishop, because if the king moves, the bishop over here on c3 is just lost, so he has to play bishop takes e4. Bishop takes e4, queen e2, bishop d5, f5, f6, taking the knight away. Knight takes d7, queen takes d7, f takes e6, queen takes e6, and just a queen trade. And now we've reached the end game, and well, it's an opposite colored bishop end game, so I can't really see how either black or white can. Although I have a pawn majority here on the queen side, and he has pawn majority on the queen side, so I mean, it's a completely drawn game. So bishop d5, and the last move bishop d8, and we both agreed to a draw. So let's take a quick look at the opening one more time. e4, d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3, queen a5. I mentioned queen d6. That's probably the most common move. Queen a5, d4, knight f6, bishop c4, c6, knight f3, bishop f5, bishop d2, e6, queen e2, bishop b4, a3, castles. Again, white can't take because the rook hangs. h3, and that was that, and we both went on with the opening book, so to speak. The correct move, or well, I don't know if correct move, but according to theory, white should have castled here. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the game, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.